I'm ready.
Thank you. It is 6:03. Call the meeting to order. Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, just to be aware, Craig Baker, member, is absent with notice,
And Lisa Merrill.
and Lisa Merrill is absent with notice. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we open for public comment?
At 6:03.
I'm actually looking at Mark.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
Fine. 6:03, we will open for public comment. Both here and Mark will let us know if anybody messages in. First order of business, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the regular school board meeting minutes from June 13th.
So,
Duncan, yep. Nancy? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Second would be entertain a motion for the special school board meeting of June 19th. I'm sorry. 19th is the second one, we just did the 13th. Nancy moved it. Second. Charlie second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next is just a footnote, right, Mary?
Yep, just an information item for policy minutes.
Okay. Second order of business, general operating expense. Entertain a motion to approve the payment of bills, manifests numbers 3038, 3039, 3001, 3002, and 3003.
so moved.
Duncan?
Second.
Charlie second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the manifests, pay the bills?
Aye.
Thank you. Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent report.
You have attachment 5. We have an enrollment report for you where we currently are. Again, this kind of ebbs and flows this time of year. Kids coming in, kids going out. August is a busy month. But it looks like we have, at this stage, kindergarten is at 48 between Sandwich, which is 5, and Interlakes Elementary at 43. And we seem to be trending with lower enrollment at the kindergarten level than we have, 5 years ago, I would say. And overall, for the district preschool through our age 22 is 928 students.
Principals report, Mr. Bryant, Mr. Hilger, and Dr. Downing. Draw a straw.
I think we were coming to talk about summer learning, right?
That was the
All
goal.
right, yeah. Okay, so I'll just start by letting you guys know that from my observations and from the reports that I received, summer learning was a lot of fun and successful out at Sandwich Central School. We had 14 students that were signed up, K through 5. This is reading, this is the TD, ran summer learning for 3 weeks. Each week had a STEM theme, a different STEM theme, and students participated in a STEM project along with reading and math skills and reinforcement. And according to their numbers, we had an attendance rate of 89%.
Wow. One kid sick one day.
Summer's tricky, but 89% of the people that signed up met their commitment. So, can I answer any questions?
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you so much. Summer learning at ILES, we invited 132 learners this summer. 83 attended, it's about 63%. Our theme was ocean. We visited the ocean this year. The students were invited based off of both classroom teachers or case managers recommending them. Each student was recommended either to work on 3 reading competencies or 3 math competencies and or both. during the summer. We had 28 staff members, including 11 paraeducators working in a one-to-one capacity with that as well. We are definitely proud to say that we had 100% full inclusion this year, even with our ESY students as well. So everybody was all together for the summer, which is a great foundation moving into the school year as well. Our attendance rate was around 80%, 10 out of 12. We were a little later on Thursdays, especially with the older students, because that's when the Meredith Community Center had their field trips as well. So we're a little later, but we're happy to have a collaboration with them as well, because we actually use that as a pickup spot for some of our kiddos too, and drop off. So yet another successful summer.
Thank you, Michael.
So I'll give a couple different summaries with the high school and the middle school information. So we had 24 students invited from the high school level and 18 students that attended, and 16 classes were completed in that time, which that's great. That's a lot of work and a lot of time that the kids put in to make sure that was done before the school year started. We have 4 students that are still kind of chipping away at a few things before the school year starts. And we had a total of 254 hours of student attendance over those 3 weeks toward their courses, and 3 faculty members and 1 paraprofessional that ran our high school portion of that. Middle school, we had 38 students invited and 24 families committed to attending. 16 of those students attended. Again, 3 faculty and teachers. Was here. She was one of our teachers. They also shared the ocean theme and worked on, aquatic life skills reports. They did a couple of different field trips. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on what you guys did?
We used we did them on Thursdays, and our first one was the Lavernack Trail, and we did a kind of a scavenger hunt with that. And then the second Thursday was an in-school field trip. And then our last Thursday, we took advantage of the beautiful weather and the Meredith Sculpture Walk, and we did a scavenger hunt with that. And we had 3 different teams going through downtown, and they had clues that they had to identify the work of art that matched that. So we were out and about.
And students did a thorough book study of the book called Flush, and they wrote summer reading projects. They worked on fractions and percentages and a variety of other middle school math skills as well. And then for life skills, we had 1 teacher and 3 paraprofessionals and a BCBA consultant. 8 students attended, and we had 84% attendance from our life skills students, which was wonderful. We went on bike rides on Monday with adaptive biking, and I got to go in on the first Monday, which was a lot of fun because I don't ride bikes. I did fall twice. The kids got a lot of entertainment out of it.
Just
but it was
following
wonderful.
the president's lead.
Well, I was the person between the water and the students, and I was the one that would, get sacrificed in the water if need be. And on Wednesdays, they would work with assistants from OT and go in and prepare simple snacks in the fax room. And Thursdays, we went to the Meredith Public Library and were incredibly active working through the community and the school building. So it was a great summer.
All in all, sounds like it was very successful. Thank you. Item 8, correspondence. Superintendent, board secretary, any board members?
Negative.
Thank you. Item 9. Boy, revisit this one. Organizational.
So we have a sample for you of an organizational chart. So we are working on becoming more detailed. So it's attachment 6. We do have some color coding to show where there is shared staff between schools or throughout the district. You do see some dotted lines. Again, this is at Sandwich Central School, all paraeducators. Mr. Hilder is the direct supervisor of. However, there is a symbiotic type of relationship that exists between the classroom teacher and special education teacher as well. And so it's really, what space are you working in? Which teacher is the actual supervising teacher of the student you're with and how that all blends together. So I think that we're getting closer to what is the desired layout. We have a draft of ILES. We're starting to feel like we need bigger paper. So my hope is by the end of this month, they will be complete. We are, again, trying to see how we bucket things and again, able to, put up all the information there, but also make it so it's usable. If there's any feedback at this time or.
No, but it is something we've been talking about for 3 years,
Yeah.
and thank you very much.
Well, and we've had, I want to be clear, we've had different versions. People
yeah.
have asked for more detail, so we have tried to meet the requests, but we are refining it as more information comes forward.
It is a living, breathing
It
document.
is. So.
Okay, while we have you on the stand, can you update us on hiring?
Certainly. So attachment 7, and again, this does ebb and flow as we get closer to the start date. Sometimes people decide to become paraeducators or bus drivers, and I will do my shout out for both positions. They're critical. If people want to make have some meaningful work to do and to make a difference, getting kids to school and home from school safely and with a positive start and into their day is critical, as well as supporting kids throughout their day at school. So 2 very important positions. So contact the Interlake School District if you desire to pursue either. So ILES looking to still fill 6 paraeducator positions. Sandwich is fully staffed. The middle high school, we are still trying to fill the Laker Learning Lab position. We do have some interest that is being pursued, so our hope is maybe we'll be able to close that gap. And then we have 9 paraeducator positions there, so that is concerning. And we will continue to interview and try to fill those as we move forward. We do tend to see an uptick as we get closer to the start of the school year.
I've been asked if there's any telltale signs.
And
That's
bus drivers, I did check in with first student. There are 2 bus routes that are open, but they do have 3 people in training. And again, that can change. They have people who've indicated they're coming back, but maybe that will change. People in training sometimes don't always follow all the way through, but that is not, that is a better position, I believe, than we were in last year. And it is a hardship on families when we aren't fully staffed for busing. We end up having to combine routes, which makes for longer, rides home for kids. And I think creates a lot of, it's not predictable for families. That's it's a hard thing to coordinate care and things like that because of that.
Last year, for a period of time, we were running 12, not 13 buses. Is it our objective to run 13?
So it is our goal to have all 13 routes running,
Okay.
but we often ended up quite a bit last year combining routes consistently. I would say more often than not.
Any other questions from the board? New business. Interlakes High School Morocco trip presentation.
Madame Bedford here this evening, and we have kind of a handout for you with an overview of a wonderful trip to Morocco. There is a beautiful slideshow, but we decided to try to keep it simple for you this evening. I will say the pictures are absolutely beautiful. Do you want to share a little bit of an overview of what the trip is?
Sure, since you're just now getting the proposal, I'll just go through it quickly. I was approached this spring, right before traveling to France with students, by my husband, who's principal at Newfound, saying, hey, we're thinking of planning a trip to Morocco. Would Interlakes like to join us? And I thought, 1 trip at a time, please. So Sheila Miller, the business teacher at Newfound, and my husband have planned a trip to Morocco for 2025, April vacation. It has been approved by Newfound School Board, and they are having students sign up. And we would we have students that are interested. In French 1A, the cultural emphasis is the French-speaking world. So students are aware that I have traveled to Morocco before and that I actually learned French in Beirut, Lebanon, so that there is more to the French-speaking world than just France, though we love France. So it was something that was starting to circulate, or my students were starting to ask about, and then this came up. So it just seemed something that the students were really interested in pursuing. And because Newfound opened it up to all their high school students, it kind of went on the announcements for anybody at Interlakes. I think we were looking at signing up seniors and juniors first before freshmen, but there is a lot of interest. So we're hoping for your approval to go ahead.
And the cost is about $4,300.
Yes, and there may be an extra level because we didn't go in on the first round of signups. I can find out what that is.
And students would have time to do fundraising and planning to, for that expense between now and 2025.
Right,
So that's a
right.
significant amount of time to save and
Right.
to contribute to it. So we know that this is the first time you're kind of hearing about it tonight, so we're not necessarily needing a decision tonight. If you want to give it some thought and do that at the next board meeting, or if you feel that you're in support of pursuing this trip to Morocco for 2025. Madame Bedford has been a very skilled traveler with students. I always feel really confident that they are going with her and overseas, and we've had successful trips. It is a different company than we've been using. We've been using
Students love travel.
Student Loves Travel.
And before that, I used Passports. And my former colleague Nancy Stetson used ACIS. So this is kind of that bigger travel company. But Students Love Travel and doesn't do Morocco. They would, but I think this is kind of a bigger company that can accommodate a larger group.
And it's nice to have a partnership with the local school, but an opportunity for kids not only to visit Morocco, but to, get to know their neighbors.
Yes,
Is there any limit on the number of
Thank you.
spaces for students? I mean, it's so early in the process, I suspect it could ebb and flow, but.
Right now, there really isn't a limit. I think we would need to consider the chaperone ratio, but these tour companies are used to bringing tours of, let's say, 40.
So that's not an issue at this stage.
Correct.
any other questions? Sounds exciting. 8-day trip, though. That's,
Oh, that was one thing. It is actually 9 days. Day one is departure and from the States, and then day 9 is returning. So it's 8 days in country.
So we'll bring it back on the 28th, give you some opportunity to think about it. And,
Absolutely.
And if you have any other questions, you can certainly let me know and we'll try to have those answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, main course, elementary literacy presentation by the trio of Mr. Ryan, Mr. Hilder.
Well, I don't know, it's a quartet, I think.
Right.
I am gonna start off, but I would like to just, this is, what you're gonna see here is a collaborative shared effort, between myself and Mr. Bryan, Ms. Papalardo, who's staying in the back row as we need her. But if you have not met Dr. Wood yet, Dr. Wood is our reading specialist for the high school and Sandwich Central School. Oh, I'm sorry, Middle. And been supporting the work. Our goal here was to kind of give you a high altitude overview of the work that we hope to continue and accomplish this school year. So Mark, if you could maybe Sure, just press the arrow. There we go. You got it. All right. So the 2023-2024 school year, we're hoping is an opportunity for our elementary schools to build on continued growth and improvement, and that's not just for students, that's for educators as well. Through common goals, coherent framework, dedicated classroom time, collaborative monitoring and analysis of data, diagnostic instruction, and professional learning. So these are all of the components that we have been considering and working on over the years, and ones that we have worked to refine moving into this year. So while I am up here, I'm going to start off by talking about our goals that we've set for ourselves and the goals that have to some degree been set for us. So they're broken up into two main parts, achievement and growth. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those. We're going to start with student achievement. So the first piece here, I'm just going to Yeah, thank you. Give those a second to get out. This is a graphic that was created in-house to represent the requirements that have been issued by the Department of Education around the New Hampshire SAS, so the state assessment.
No, I was gonna say click on it so that members of the public can see it.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah, isn't that a live?
I can click it, thanks. So we took this graphic, what you have in front of you, and I'll give you a little bit of time to digest it, is you've got two columns, ELA on the left, which we're focusing on tonight, and math on the right. The state has a target of, I should have kept a copy for myself. The state has a target of 70.61% of students will be proficient or higher by 2027. And then they have backwards worked it incrementally so that we have targets to work towards over that time. I'll just give you kind of a second to look at that and make sure that
I
chart
think
makes
these people
sense.
in the audience were able to get a copy mark.
Okay. Are there any questions about that document information?
Only from a historical perspective, obviously, the last couple of years have been not normal by any measure. Where has Interlakes been in years past? What's our historical high, for sake of discussion, in ELA or math?
I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer that question historically. We have not had targets set for us
Okay.
in the past that I can think of. Can you think of historical targets?
We have not. This is last year was our first year of having the target set. So the State Department of Ed did some long-term goals and short-term goals. I think it's important to remember that the New Hampshire SAS is still a relatively new assessment for us. We've only been administering it for a few years, and we did have a pause during the spring of COVID. So we're still certainly learning a great deal about this assessment.
So for kindergarten through third grade, the performance or the indicator around achievement has to some degree been set for us by the state. We anticipated you want to know where we're at. So at the end of the spring this year, 43% of our students were proficient or higher.
In grade 3 through 6.
In grades 3 through 6, with the goal being set by the state at 64%. It's important before I go any further, this data that we're putting in front of you has not been embargoed, that's the word, right? Embargoed, which means that number may change once the state does all their analysis and finalizes, and we also can't tell you at this point how we compare to the rest of the state because it's not available. If we take that information here, the 43%, that's Sandwich Central School, Interlakes Elementary School, clumped together, grades 3 through 6. That's how it looks if you break it up by grade level.
Grade 5 had, for the 22-23, about 38% of the students at Interlakes Elementary School do have individual education plans. Also, grade 5 for the 22-23 is a class at Sandwich Central School that Mr. Hiller has had concerns for as well. I think it seems like 5th grade, the COVID, the timing of that, and other needs is something for us to be mindful of as that group continues to move up in grades and when they converge.
They were in first and second grade when it hit, right? It's a critical time for so grades 3 through 6. So not to leave K2 out, the SAS only measures 3 through 6. So we came up with a secondary set of achievement criteria for K through 6. K2. Using the same percentage indicator from the state, the 64%, we are measuring how many of our learners in kindergarten through second grade are in the 40th percentile or higher based on the NWEA test that they take in the spring. So measuring spring to spring. So Sandwich Central School, Inner Lakes Elementary School, learners kindergarten through second grade, clumped together, 73% of those students were in the 40th percentile or higher. We break that up by grade level, that's how it works. So we have achievement goals, benchmarks, and a way to measure it for kindergarten through sixth grade, but we're using 2 different tools, NWEA for K2, SAS 6. Good so far?
And NWA is not necessarily a predictor of how you will do on the New Hampshire SAS. They're definitely not in alignment there.
Okay. So in addition to achievement, for a long time now in this district, we have valued student growth. And so that could be, student comes in here, or a student comes in here, or students in the middle. We want all students to grow regardless of where they start. We use NWEA to measure growth. Their system is built on achievement and growth using their proprietary software. They take information from a student test or tests and they develop a growth target. That growth target fluctuates depending on how the student did or how old they are. They get a growth target and then we can determine whether or not they have met that growth target by the end of the year. So the goal that we set for ourselves, the state did not set this, we set this for ourselves, is that 70% of our learners will meet their growth target as measured by NWEA spring to spring, K to 6. Little caveat on the kindergarten piece, you have to have enough information in the system before the system can make a growth target. So if a kindergarten student is not necessarily ready to take this test, we wouldn't have a growth target for them until first grade. So again, clumping everyone together, and this is grades 1 through 6, 53% of the students, Sandwich Central School and Inner Lakes Elementary School met their growth target. And that's how it looks broken down by grade level.
Interesting. Grade 1's the high bar.
That may be the result of recent work.
Yes.
And grade 5 again.
And
is the low.
it's a hypothesis, but that's that group that was in first and second grade when the pandemic hit. Right. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but
that affected everybody.
I think we can, yeah. It's a big deal. Yeah. So before I hand this off, in summary, we're looking at achievement, we're looking at growth, set targets, we have the tools to measure those targets, and the goals and the process have been communicated with the staff before they left for the summer. Can I answer any questions?
I guess I do have a question. The NWEA versus the SAS and the disconnect to that. I mean, it looks like all of us are having two cohorts of students, and we're trying to assess their performance in an imperfect way. And I guess do you feel more confident in one assessment over the other? And can you speak to the values of the SAS and the value of the NWEA?
I think I will lean on Mrs. Papalardo to
Sure.
help.
And I appreciate that this
She's
is
well versed in both, and can really maybe give a deeper understanding of what the NWA is and the New Hampshire SAS, how that was created.
Sure. So the way I think about it is the New Hampshire SAS is more of a integrated question set, where a particular assessment question will be assessing not just one particular standard or skill, but rather multiple. So the questions tend to be more multi-step. They tend to require interacting with different resources and then responding to an integration of them. I would say as an assessment, one of the other biggest differences is that that assessment isn't just assessing reading comprehension, it's also assessing writing skills and language skills and grammar. So they're not really comparable in that sense either. The New Hampshire SAS is also grade-based. So when our third graders take the New Hampshire SAS, they are only assessed on third grade content and skills. Whereas the NWEA is actually all computer-based and it's adaptive. So if students are routinely answering questions correctly, the algorithm inside the computer software will spiral up and ask increasingly complex questions. The questions are not really integrative, so they're more kind of just individual skill-based. And so the kinds of questions that students interact with are pretty different on that assessment. And unlike the New Hampshire SAS, we don't really get a score that says whether they're proficient at their grade level. We get a score that essentially tells us where they fall in comparison to all of the other students in the nation who take that assessment. Kind of it's a comparative score rather than a.
And that sample size is about 2 million or so.
It is one of the most valid assessments that's available to school districts for that reason.
Thank you.
It may not be the same today, but in past years when we've talked about the NEWAs and the value that they bring, one of the points that came up was how quickly you get feedback from NEWA. Is that still the case where SAS would take, 3 months or 6 months before you get the data back?
It is interesting. On the NWEA, we get the results within 24 hours, so it is a very quick turnaround time. Our teachers do have the ability to log into a website where they can access their students' performance and interact with the analysis of the test results at any given time. I would say for the New Hampshire SAS, it's kind of similar actually. There is a different place that our teachers can log into that's supported from our New Hampshire Department of Education. We do have pretty immediate access. We have some practice modules in there that we can introduce students to so they can get used to the interface and the kinds of questions that will be asked. Our teachers do also have fairly immediate access to their data. We don't get the same kinds of things back, so unfortunately they don't re-release the actual writing samples that our students complete, so we're not able to see the writing pieces. So there are some limitations on exactly what we get back. We're able to see the scores of their writing, but we don't actually see their samples. We get rather kind of an annotated like sample student from the Department of Education. And then it's pretty immediate. Unfortunately, the state does have kind of a lengthy process that they go through. So our data was already released last spring, fairly immediately. It doesn't actually become embargoed. So whether a student is proficient or not, there are always some fluctuations once we go through that process, which happens in late fall. But I think from an educator perspective, I think because the NWEA drills down to more discrete skills, I think it's safe to say that our teachers would share that they tend to use that information more on a daily basis to be able to drill down, identify which students need development in which skills, and do some groupings and some targeted instruction. I think they use that information probably more routinely than the results that they get from the New Hampshire SAS. Because again, that's more of a summative end performance.
Are the growth plans specific also to the skills that the student on the NWEA, that the student needs to work on? Or is the growth plan individualized to the extent that you're suggesting the whole process is?
That's a great question. One of the other benefits of NWEA is that they actually present the information to our educators in varied ways. So there are probably about 15 different reports that we can run. One of the reports that we can run are kind of strength-based reports. So we can easily, just with a click, generate like what are the students' top skills that we want to really commend and acknowledge and celebrate. And then what are those skills that would be the top 3 to 5 skills that we really want them working on. So we get all of that information from the website.
Okay, great. I am going to turn this over to Dr. Wood at this point. And she's going to be talking to you about that framework and model that we discussed.
Okay, so when we look at literacy, there are 6 pillars, if you will, one of which is not just reading, one is writing. And that's tested on that New Hampshire SAS. Phonemic awareness is the awareness of the sounds in spoken language that we've really found as a precursor to learning to read and one of those underlying skills. Phonics instruction, and the more we learn about the science of reading and particularly a brain imaging information that we have now, we recognize that the human brain really reads phonetically, right? Letters represent sounds, and we read left to right and are able to read words. And the more proficient we get, we're able to do that with fluency. And to the point that we just automatically recognize words, but we really still are using that phonetic code that our language is grounded in. Vocabulary is another key aspect, understanding the meaning of words and where words come from, and all of that, and language comprehension, which leads to reading comprehension. So they're all elements that we focus on within our literacy program. So one change that we, maybe it was the continuation, but one model that we're really going to focus on this year at elementary level is that each teacher will facilitate a 90-minute ELA instructional block. It may not be contiguous, but each day, 90 minutes will be dedicated to English language arts, to the reading and writing each of those components. So 60 minutes of that will be core instruction. It's considered tier 1, so everyone will receive that grade level instruction focused on the standards and the competencies. And then in addition to that, a 30-minute time frame will be set aside to provide more targeted instruction to students. So based on their specific needs. And so we'll have a variety of diagnostic assessments. Some students may be ready for additional challenge. Some students may need additional practice with real specific components. And so that will be designed in collaboration with a variety of supports, whether that's special education, interventionists, related service providers. So that time to really focus in and give students that extra practice where it's needed. And so that can happen in a flexible model or within a single classroom, however teams of teachers decide to provide that instruction, but all students will be getting that grade level core instruction. You want to talk about some of the other initiatives?
So as part of the reading planning for next year, obviously we want to take our collaborative efforts and look at what practices have we been doing that have led to success that we want to build upon and continue. And then also look at what practices we want to continue to evolve for next year. As we know, they're evidence-based and also to gain on the traction that we've been building. So as far as continued practices, obviously we're looking at universal screening to identify strengths and also areas of need. We're going to continue our collaborative approaches with our data team meetings throughout the school year that happen at least 3 times a year. We have our aligned assessment menu, K to 6, both elementary schools. The continuation of diagnostic assessments to help with our intervention process and obviously our progress monitoring as we go throughout the year. Continuing with our Title I programming, K to 3 at ILES. Leaning on our reading specialists for that support and guidance, really using their expertise. And then continue to build off the resources that we have and identifying those materials that we have in-house and gain upon that. As we looked at what practices we'd like to evolve, we're going to look to continue increasing our in-house capacity to manage, construct our own data walls with the help of our collaborative efforts with our reading specialists, implementing a core and structured phonics program at the K-2 level, making sure that, again, we have a collaborative approach to looking at our design model when it comes to reading literacy intervention and the resources that we have to manage that. Increase, as Mrs. Parpolato talked about, with the New Hampshire SAS, using the statewide assessments and the tools that they have. They call them modulars, which even though the state testing is grades 3 through 6, the modulars have gone all the way down to first grade as well. So students are getting that exposure to those types of questions, testing before third grade. And then the use of our advisory council, again, as a collaborative effort to make sure that, information is shared through all educators, not just classroom teachers, but again, this is a joint collaborative effort as we move forward. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Wood, who's just going to talk about a little bit more about that core phonics that we're looking to evolve this year.
So I don't know if you can see that little flag there, but the simple view of reading. And we look at, so there are kind of two components: word recognition, like can you recognize the words on the page, and then language comprehension. And we multiply them because if you don't have one of them, anything times 0 is 0. So, I mean, there are kids that can read every single word on the page with fluency, and you ask them, what did you read? I have no idea, right? And there are some that they can listen to something and speak and answer questions about that, but pulling the words off the page is a challenge, and we really need both. So focusing in on word recognition there, we have a phonemic awareness program that's pretty well integrated, the Haggerty Phonics in kindergarten and first grade, phonemic awareness. And phonics, I think teachers were really recognizing that there were some components, but a really systematic, explicit program was not necessarily in place, and a lot of teachers were pulling from other resources that they had. Some had training in Orton Gillingham or some other interventions, and were pulling some different things in and enhancing what we were already using. And in the data team meetings at ILES this winter, in a couple different grade level conversations, it came up that there was a little bit of lack of continuity in what happened in one classroom and another. And with flexible grouping, students might change the teachers, they group with different students and a different teacher, and they might use different terminology and just some different elements in their instruction. Likewise, interventionists were kind of pulling their own tools in and not necessarily just providing additional practice in that same language and concepts that they were getting in their core instruction. And so I really thought it would be nice to have one scope and sequence that all teachers were using. And so teachers were excited to dig into that work of choosing a program. And Carolyn Malahan, the reading specialist at ILS, and I looked at a bunch of programs. We really dug in and looked across the country at different states and what's recommended. We used an instructional rubric from the Reading League, or a curriculum review rubric from the Reading League and the Institute for Educational Sciences, and came up with 6 programs that we felt had all of the research-based elements and that were evidence-based, and they've been found to be effective in studies. And so we put together a document kind of highlighting the different elements of each of them, a table comparing them, along with links that folks could go to learn more, and we presented that to all of the teachers at Sandwich Central School and Interlace Elementary School, kindergarten through 2nd grade, as well as special educators and interventionists. And gave them about a month to look at things and then sent a survey out as far as rank ordering them and as far as ones they'd be interested in looking into further. And 2 programs came out atop across the board. They were in the top 2 choices of everyone. And so we were given a day. Jeremy and Mike gave us almost a whole day after the students went home for summer, the first professional day, and we got together and looked at a presentation of 2 programs, the 95 Phonics Core from 95% Group and UFly Foundations from the University of Florida Literacy Institute. And engaged in some great conversations talking about the pros and cons and benefits and challenges of the 2 programs. And all of the teachers in the room arrived at a consensus for the most part. The only difference is that we found that the UFly Foundations program lended itself better to some differentiation within the multi-age classrooms at Sandwich Central School, whereas the 95 Core Phonics was a bit more whole class with a presentation on the board and didn't feel quite like it would work as well in multi-age classrooms. So we decided to, at Sandwich Central School, go with that one, and at Interlace Elementary School to go with the 95 Phonics Core. But they both, by the end of each grade, cover the same things, just in a little different format with some different materials. And so we're putting together professional development for the fall and ready to roll with these programs in the fall. And they both monitor progress along the way and will help us to really track progress and provide interventions to students who are not keeping up throughout the year. So that's one element, and then we'll continue to do work on the language comprehension side throughout the year.
We are using Title IIA funds to fund the professional learning for the 95% group, which is about $24,000. Materials is about $24,000, and we're utilizing district funds for that. The University of Florida materials are free, which is wonderful, and doing in-house and training from them.
How far down the road will it be before you start to see data coming back at you?
So I think that you can see some data coming back at this stage for the early grades. Like first grades numbers were very strong for NWEA, and I think that's a testament to a lot of concerted effort on a lot of people's parts. This will certainly gain us more traction. And so, you know, our goal should be that we want all students to be reading at or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. There's, you know, that's a significant window of time. It's very important. It becomes harder and harder to support students as the gap gets wider. What happens too is students' motivation, frustration levels, those get higher, particularly, you know, as you enter adolescence and if you're still struggling with reading. So we want to hit the ground really hard and make as much gain as we can. So our goal, again, by trying to have a proficiency goal and a growth goal, being very clear about those goals, staying focused, those goals will continue to increase. The state goal will naturally increase, which, and again, we may have to adjust. When you look at K-2, where we are right now, we're already at that goal to start with. So over time, we want to raise that higher so that we're striving to increase proficiency at an earlier age.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
I thank the 4 of you. All right, still in the category of new business. Mary's going to talk to us a bit on what we can possibly do with courses where we have less than 10 students requesting.
So maybe to start with, it might just be helpful to look at for a moment, and that's going back to the enrollment report. Excuse me, to keep in mind, we do have some bubbles that we want to be thinking about, like our current 8th grade student, our new 8th grade students. The new 8th grade students, we have 90 students. So they will be in high school next fall. So
What was the number?
90. students.
Been a while.
Compared to this year's ninth grade class, which is 63, the graduating class for this coming year will be 75.
Wow.
So we just, it's easy to look at lower numbers right now, but that is something I think we need to be mindful of, as well as grade 6 is 83, grade 5 is 80. We're going to start to definitely feel, again, a slowing down of bubbles, really third grade and below. But I do want to, again, just acknowledge fifth grade, both at Sandwich Central School and at ILES, they are a high needs group, and then we just need to be mindful of that along the way. So I think it's just important to keep in mind that it's, there are points and times and then bubbles, and we need to make sure we have enough staffing when we get those bubbles. Clearly, right now, we have enough staffing, so we have a different conversation. So it is attachment 8, and again, contracts have already been distributed. These are staff that we are contracted to have for the coming year. What we want to try to look at, I think, this fall is how do we engage in a conversation that tries to play down the field a bit, looking at, within the next 5 years, trying to play some of this out. What might we do to be able to meet requirements? What are some things that maybe if we had support for that maybe we would sunset? If there are things that people want to hold on to and are comfortable with lower class sizes, I think those are meaty conversations, and it's best to have those, I think, in the fall before we're getting into budget seasons and things along that line, or when contracts have already been distributed. So we have presented to you, the policy does require that 10 or under that the board does provide support for running those courses. I want to commend Holly Beaton and Stacy Gagnon for the enormous amount of work they do to build the schedule. And that process takes a lot of time. They do an extensive amount of meeting with students. So there's a lot of personalization into students picking their courses. We did group it by department so that you can start to at least see that there, definitely some areas, that we're running lower class sizes than in other areas. I will say for math, we have some students that are already indicating maybe a change. So what we would be requesting is maybe some latitude from the board to talk about maybe looking at the master schedule and maybe splitting a geometry class that's like at 23, which again, 11 and 12 are small classes, but I think that might be a better option than potentially 2 AP calculus students when we do know that Moultonborough could help support us. And I think that would be, possibly something we want to consider, but we'd like to be able to talk with the teacher and the department and go that route.
Can you talk through that a little bit more?
Sure.
So I just want to make sure I'm following what you're saying. You're saying that there's 2 AP calculus students and that we would ask those students to go to Moultonborough
Or
as a necessity.
relax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
I just
use that full year, because AP Calculus is a full year
Yep.
course. Use that to support generally sophomores in geometry,
Mhm.
and I think the other course was Algebra 2. So you're,
Sure.
So
you know,
that
they tend to be, I
teacher
would
then
say,
be-
Yeah,
kids who would
integrated.
benefit from probably the class being split, and I think a better utilization of our resource, where we do have an option
I
for
appreciate that.
AP Calculus.
That makes perfect sense. I guess I would want to hear a little bit more about the relationship with Moultonborough, because that's not something we've done very often over and I appreciate if we're gonna be doing
Yeah,
that
it's
more.
one of those things that I know, like last year they weren't able to, I think, fill a business teacher position and utilized us to
So
do
what's
that.
transportation like, and what's the logistics of getting
So
Tuber
it is
students,
often students providing the transportation or the parents. I will say the way the schedules rotate is a little different. I think they are on like a rotating day schedule, block schedule rotating. But Mrs. Beaton has done a lot of legwork to make sure, that the time of day that's offered and then reworking maybe some schedules, it would create some other conflicts and some other choices. It's imperfect.
Is VLAX a realistic
VLAX
alternative
is
to
a
that? It
realistic-
might be smoother for our students.
And that could be the option, I think it's the conversations with the students, what's gonna serve them best. A college course could be an option too, potentially. I think we were trying to solve for another student with trying to take an honors class. Attendance at the UIT conflicted with when our honors time is, and there was only one section for us. That student has, through a lot of effort, has found Lakes Region Community College as an option. So, it does get to that personalization, kind of the a la carte, what you're pulling from here and there. But, I think as all of our area enrollments continue, it may get to the point we're going to hang on to, maybe we're hanging on to the AP English, somebody else is hanging on to the AP Calculus, somebody else is hanging on to, an AP Biology or something to that effect. VLEX has changed the game quite a bit. I think online learning has improved a great deal. Online learning is not for every student. And I will say that during our visit from NESC, and we'll be presenting to you their final report for their collaborative visit, they definitely cite it's an accolade for the number of AP courses that we do run given our size. So there's that trade-off. I think that's why I think it's a conversation, because it's a decision of a direction that maybe people want to consider, or at least intentionally make a decision about that.
You talk about an agency that comes out and recognizes this is something that's over and above. Is that only if it's done in-house, or is that something that can be accomplished through a VLAX?
That would be a good thing to maybe tease out with NESC. I don't know if you have any.
Well, I think that their accolades certainly came above they were talking not only about the AP classes that we offer, but our collaborations and our partnerships with Lakes Region and,
Sure.
Running Start and all of those different pieces that we have for our school that's as small as we are. Our students have a lot of opportunity, and that's where the accolade came. But the AP course, with the enrollment is certainly impressive when you look at the
Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
I think
But
the
also-
other competing, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, what you're saying makes perfect sense to me as a board member, that if it is, we have resources at play, and, supporting foundational math courses when highly advanced and highly motivated students have other opportunities that may be arduous, that makes a lot of sense to support the geometry class when it could help 13 students with more individualized instruction.
We did talk about if, the calculus students decide to take it through VLAX, and if they're struggling, we want to know that, and then, we would be willing to look at, is there some tutoring or something we can put in place? It's a different resource, but I think that might be a better way to approach it.
That's a very good
But I
point.
think we need to have, that, I think it's a conversation that you want to bring to the community and have their opportunity as well. There's a finite number of resources, right? We're very fortunate. Are there ways that when we look at our upcoming fifth graders that we're worried about, would we want to shift some resources at some point when they enter seventh grade from the high school level down to the seventh grade level to maybe be supportive? Because all seventh graders are, we have 4 core subject teachers that they're spread over, and that may be something, to think about. And again, maybe there's a plan of natural attrition over time as well. But something that's more of a bigger picture, but we are ready to start school in a couple
This
weeks
is a
here.
part of the conversation that's been going on for more than a decade. In a competency-based learning structure, you don't hold them back because they're a seventh grader.
And we try very hard to provide those opportunities. I think, though, it is challenging, particularly if you have a seventh grader who is at a fifth grade level. And I think we have to be realistic when you just saw some of that performance data and you are looking at 38% of ILES, and I don't know what SES is off the top of my head. That's a number of students who are on individual education plans. So it may be something we want to think about switching for a bit. Resources, again, probably not needed long-term when you look at the enrollment of the kindergarten class coming in the first grade class, but something worth talking about. But what we're hoping tonight is you will allow us to be in compliance with the policy and provide us a little flexibility, because also if you look at French, and that is a conversation, relative to language and supporting language. There are 2 students for French 4 and 5. We may want to look at potentially utilizing that resource to offer some additional sections of food. It's very popular as an elective. And we have been trying to recall, we did not hire the halftime family and consumer science teacher. We have our 3 world language teachers picking that up. And I do believe the calculus piece could have an impact on that French. So a little, meaning if the student takes the course at potentially Knowlton Borough, it would conflict with the time when French 4-5 is offered.
So you'd literally be down to 1.
So potentially, so that doesn't make sense. So we want to be able to have a little flexibility.
But then you also run into we have a French teacher,
But maybe we look at it as an independent study versus, I think we need to, a teacher, a one-to-one French.
that seems
That does not make
untenable.
sense, right?
But then, is that the more painful conversation? And I say this carefully and with regret. Can we support a French department as much as that saddens me to contemplate?
I think that is part of the conversation. I think it's part of the conversation is, and again, it's difficult and I don't want to cause a lot of anxiety for people at this stage, but are we able to support the programming that we're trying to offer?
And I think with each one of these, I'll say it for French in particular, I think it would be a tragedy for our entire community to not have the broad range of multiple foreign languages. And, I've said this in the public in the past, we're a few hours away from the second biggest Francophone city in the world, and our state has ties to the French-speaking world. It would be sad. And yet, if we've got French 4 with 1 kid in it,
And maybe we are able to offer, I think as we look at it, do we offer French 1, French 2, and then higher levels go relax or some other experience. So I think those are all, I think that's part of a community conversation. What are, you could plan anything, right? And you could run classes with no students. But do you want to be paying for that as a community? Do you want, I think I would put out other questions. Do you want to have universal preschool? I think that, and again, that's kind of like part of strategic planning in a way. That is that something you want to consider? If it is, are you willing to pay for that?
But the difficulty of the conversation, I think, is ultimately, if we don't have French, then we don't have French at all. And if we don't have enough to fulfill, it's a balancing test, and it's a horrible one. So.
Charlie, your question?
No, I was just gonna get to the matter at hand and make a motion to approve all of the policies.
With some latitude?
With some latitude.
Well, I second that motion. That's what the conversation was to determine.
Yes.
This is an area where you absolutely need to have some latitude.
Thank you.
I would make one little point, though, based on recent conversations, that we don't need to even throw in the part about with latitude, because we just need, because of our policy, to approve these.
Correct.
It's up to you to decide how to implement them.
Yes.
Perfect.
And the contractor's on.
So,
I'm a little concerned because of the clause in the policy about optimal size of a class. If you've got a class of 2, there's, you know,
It's optimal for the students.
it might not be.
I find, in my career, I found the smallest classes the hardest.
So
to
I
do,
mean too, I
you know.
agree. And if you've got, you know, one who never says anything, you know, who can read French and understand it, but doesn't speak. And, you know, it just, the likelihood of those kinds of things happening in a smaller class is, so there is, 2, it just rubs me the wrong way in terms
And
of-
again, I think we
Being
want to have
just, but-
serious conversations
Yeah.
about what makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you know when you need to bring a class like that back?
You know, sunsetting something and then bringing it back. I think you start, well, some of it comes, again, community interest might be a driver of that. It might be if you are only keeping introductory courses and you're seeing higher numbers in those introductory courses and kids you know, you're able to say, wow, 25 of them are going on to BLEX, you know, French 3, maybe that's an experience worth bringing back to the table.
It's not a death knell, it's just a sleep, as long as.
Well, if you
It will
eliminate
ebb
it
and flow.
entirely, it would be a death knell until
Right.
there was some,
Right, until there's enough, you know,
yeah.
capacity to warrant a change.
But it's the same process that we see when, like, robotics and the STEAM work that we've been doing. 10 years ago, it was 0. First year, it was 3, I think. And now look at it.
Well,
And, you know, with STEAM, I would say it's difficult because when you look at it on paper, but there is the whole after-school component that has a lot of students
I was
involved
gonna say, are there only 6 students in robotics?
that take the course, but not, there's the
Oh, it's different from
co-curricular
the
part,
club.
which is,
Mhm.
you know, I think, and I'm gonna look at Dr. Downing, who's looking up something, but
I'm not looking up, I'm communicating with some teachers that I want to be aware of some of these
yes,
discussions.
I
So
don't want to
whether
cause
anybody nervous or
anxiety.
upset.
I think we need to make sure nobody gets, you know, it's anxiety producing and people left thinking one thing and then as schedules change, we've been hoping they will change in a more positive direction. But the co-curricular for robotics, first is about 40 kids, 30 kids?
Oh,
You don't, that's okay.
I would say
it's solid.
I would say it's at least 35 to 40.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
solid,
So the course is
correct.
completely different, so 9 of them
Well,
are taking a class, but yeah.
Would you not suggest that those that are taking the course, the vast majority of them are also in the club?
I would think that would be
And I
an
think if they're
assumption.
not, they get into it. Like for some, that's often the driver of the interest. Yeah.
When are you gonna start the one on AI?
Once we get up to speed with that. It's
The
really-
world is changing. The world is changing.
Well, our board chairman's oldest son is enrolled, I think it's either West Virginia, North Carolina, for a PhD in AI.
Wow.
That's how fast
Mm.
the colleges have, of course, it's been growing there. You may make your motion now,
I
Mr.
did make a
Hanson.
motion.
You did make a motion, did you get it? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
So I just want to do a little clarifying piece. So I interpret it, the board does, although you have approved these, you are also giving us the authority to not necessarily run a class of 2, but to rework it based on the best interest of the students. I just want to
Whatever you
make sure
think
that
is
people are
best.
not
I just
confused
raised that
that
question.
you're
because-
indicating.
The best interest of all
Yeah.
students
Yep.
across each department.
As
Perfect.
I did.
And just a quick shout out that 77% of the students that took AP exams in 2023 got a score of 3 or better.
That's good. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
for this next item, locker room
Yes.
timetable, I think we should table this until we have all members present.
I do feel,
For this.
I agree with you.
Okay.
This, I think we should all be here.
Members?
I'm sorry?
Mr. Hanson has made a recommendation that item D under new business
Table.
be tabled.
Until we're all here?
I'm happy. Do you want a motion to table?
Yes.
I move to table D.
Second.
Questions, discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
sure Craig and Lisa will thank us for including them down the line.
Next item of business, fresh fruit and vegetable program, 23-24.
This is just an information item. We get just over 11,000 for our middle school students for fresh fruits and vegetables, and we get just over 30,000 for Interlakes Elementary. That means kids have fresh fruit and vegetables for snack. We do, as a district, make sure we provide that in sandwich as well as at the high school level. It makes a big difference for kids to just be able to grab that.
And ARPA, ESSER 3, required in the Lake School District safe return in person. Mrs. Moore, is this yours?
So this is a requirement of ESSER funding that we have a plan to open school related to COVID. And so you have our plan.
Number
on
11.
Number 11, and basically it says we'll do whatever we're told to do.
Yep.
But it is a requirement every 6 months that we bring it forward.
We don't need to vote on that.
That, no motion.
You do need to vote on it.
Oh, we do.
I move to accept the proposal as presented.
Second?
Nancy second. Can't miss a hug.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You can certainly wait for the next item if you want in non-public and do it after. But it is a professional employee. It is part of the contract, so.
I'd be happy to move that in public.
I'd second it.
The contractually based one that was funded.
Mhm.
So
Any other points? We've got a motion and a second. And can I get the motion read back?
Motion to approve the non-resident tuition request for a professional employee
Oh, so we.
as presented. That's a professional employee. It's part of their contract.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Did we do the one above that? Motion to approve Interlake's safe return?
Yes.
We did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good.
Do.
Policies.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to present. These are just first readings. No motion necessary on those?
You do a motion to approve the first reading?
And just a FYI for fellow board members, Duncan and Craig and I, along with our very capable staff, you will continue to probably see large blocks of policies like this as we
Yeah.
pedal to catch up.
also, just another point of clarification, we are in a process of harmonizing our policy book with the School Boards Association, and that's why policies now will have 2 and 3 letter abbreviations associated with them, usually as well as numbers. The School Boards Association uses letters.
Is that like the BBBA?
Yes, exactly. So we're now looking at DO, BBAR, all of those.
So now individuals, if the public wants to go check out one of our policies and compare it right to the School Board Association, it'll go directly to the same policy. And I'll make the motion to approve the first readings of the following policies as amended.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Stefan, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And on the final reading side, Cheryl?
I'll make a motion to approve the second and final readings of the following policies as amended.
I'll second that one too.
Thank you. No further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, down to the fun part. Didn't we already do correspondence?
No, it's on there twice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Didn't catch that.
Public comment?
Public comment, do we have anything, Mark? Mr.
I don't
Clark?
have anything.
And I don't believe we have any public remaining. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Welcome.
Thanks for coming just for the entertainment. So public comment would be closed at 7:17.
That's what I have, 7:17, Mark.
Oh, we're doing closed. It's 7:17.
That was open.
And as we round the fourth curve,
Minimum.
Chair would entertain a motion to enter non-public.
So moved.
And it's for C and I would like to propose the board
Also
include
the-
legal.
The legal
Yes.
reason, which is, I believe, health, according to our attorney. I'll do the roll call. Porter second.
Yes.
Ms. Balaj.
Yes.
Ms. Steiner.
Yes.
I'm yes, and Mr. Billings.
Yes.
That's Ever's.
We are all unanimously
So I don't have to worry
going into non-public.
about the bus.
Non-public.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.